It's 7 p.m. Thursday, October 17th, here in Seoul.
Coming up on News Center tonight. President Moon Jae-in stresses the need for the government's fiscal expansion to boost Korea's sluggish domestic economy.
A senior U.S. official says Washington is ready to address North Korea's security concerns in exchange for the regime taking meaningful steps towards denuclearization.
The IMF has picked the South Korea-Japan trade dispute as one of the factors that could hurt the global economy, along with a trade spat between the U.S. and China.
And South Korea looks to boost the nation's drone industry by cutting red tape obstructing its growth. Seoul is hoping this will pave the way for various new services such as drone deliveries. NEWSCENTER begins now.
Good evening to our viewers in Asia and hello to others watching from around the world. Welcome to Arirang News Center. Live from Seoul, I'm Han-daeun.
And I'm Noaram. Thank you, as always, for joining us this evening. Our top story, President Moon Jae-in said today it is the duty of his administration to increase government expenditures to boost the economy when times are tough.
Arirang's chief political correspondent, Shin Se-min, starts us off.
President Moon Jae-in zeroing in on economy. Amid weaker global growth, the president said his administration is firm on keeping its expansionary fiscal policy while working to revitalize public investment to keep the economy afloat.
세계 경기 둔화로 인한 수출과 투자 감소를 타개하기 위해 수출 기업에 대한 지원을 강화하고 민간 투자가 활성화될 수 있도록 정부가 적극적으로 나서야 합니다.
Reiterating that Asia's fourth largest economy, like many others, is going through turbulence because of external factors like trade protectionism, the president said now is the time to concentrate energy on the economy and people's lives, and a greater emphasis on investments.
기업들이 시스템 반도체, 디스플레이, 미래차, 바이오 헬스 등 신산업 분야에서 투자를 대폭 확대하고 있습니다. 벤처 투자도 사상 최대로 늘어났습니다. 우리 경제에 아주 좋은 소식입니다.
He announced that the government plans to invest more in the construction sector and promised to boost public investment in social overhead capital as well. The attendees also discussed issues ranging from the recent employment data, the flexible working hour system, to the government response to African swine fever. The vice finance minister has separately called on the central and the regional governments to execute all their budgets in the last quarter of the year to deal with downside economic risks. Aside from one meeting last year, this was only the second time the president has gathered all his economic policymakers since taking office in 2017. The president's message seen as a way of stressing the importance of expanding public and private investment and showing that the president himself is on the case. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki met with foreign investors in New York on Wednesday local time to show them the resilience of the South Korean economy and present the government's future economic plans. Those investors included Executive Vice Chair at Bank of America Merrill Lynch Jim Quigley and Global Head of Corporate Banking at J.P. Morgan Sjoerd Lienart. Hong said the economy has three major shock buffers. Those are strong relations with other countries, sound finances, and a balanced industrial structure. In response to economic risks, he said South Korea is expanding its fiscal policy by increasing total spending by 9.3% in next year's budget plan. He added that South Korea will promote a manufacturing renaissance and development of the service industry while making strategic investments in response to the fourth industrial revolution. A senior U.S. official says Washington is ready to address North Korea's security concerns in exchange for the regime taking meaningful steps towards denuclearization. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
David Stilwell, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, testified to the Senate Foreign Relations Subcommittee on East Asia on Wednesday that Washington's denuclearization talks with North Korea are on the right track compared to before. He added the task at hand is persuading the regime that a security guarantee from the U.S. is worth trading for their stockpile of nuclear weapons. His remarks come after working-level talks between Pyongyang and Washington broke down in Stockholm earlier this month, and after North Korean media reported earlier this week that Kim Jong-un had made symbolic visits, raising anticipation a big announcement could be in the works as the places were frequented by Kim ahead of grand political or diplomatic decisions. Responding to a question about North Korea's security interests, Stilwell said it's the only thing the regime thinks about and said, quote, a lot of other things that they throw out there are distractors, leverage in some form. He said Washington's task is to convince the North Koreans they'll be safer without nuclear weapons, but that sanctions imposed by the UN Security Council will remain in effect until the nuclear weapons are gone. In a report submitted before the hearing, Stilwell said the U.S. is prepared to resume constructive talks on 4 clauses of the 2018 Singapore Agreement aimed at achieving the final fully verified denuclearization of North Korea. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
It's now 40 days until a special summit commemorating ties between South Korea and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. The leaders of the 10 ASEAN member countries will be coming to Busan for a summit under the theme of people, prosperity, and peace. Much attention is also drawn to whether North Korean leader Kim Jong-un might cross the border to the south for the event upon the invitation of President Moon. Our Park Hee-jun reports.
The 40-day countdown for the South Korea-ASEAN Commemorative Summit kicked off on Wednesday with eyes on the special summit next month, which will bring together heads of state from 10 members of the ASEAN countries to South Korea's southeastern port city of Busan. With emphasis on the 3 Ps, people, prosperity, and peace, as coined by South Korean President Moon Jae-in, summit organizers said they're keeping their fingers crossed that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will make a last-minute decision to take part in the November summit.
We continue to believe that if Chairman Kim visits, it will be positive for peace and stability on the Korean peninsula.
All 3.5 million citizens of Busan dearly wish that Chairman Kim visits the city. We still cherish the time when we welcomed and met North Korean athletes and officials during the 2002 Asian Games. And I think the North also has a good image of Busan.
However, for now, South Korean officials echo in one voice that the North Korean leader's visit is neither guaranteed nor completely out of the question. ASEAN members hold a special key to North Korea, and they have continuously supported President Moon's Korean Peninsula peace drive. 2 ASEAN countries, Singapore and Vietnam, played host to summit talks between leaders of North Korea and the U.S., and the ASEAN Regional Forum exists as the only security dialogue that includes North Korea. The hopeful message came as South Korea launched the one-time ASEAN Korea train from Seoul to Busan to celebrate the 30 years of bilateral friendship. Taking the train from Seoul Station, the 200 guests from Korea and ASEAN nations have traveled here to the southeastern city of Busan, the host city for the special summit, the largest international event under the Moon Jae-in administration. With the hosting of the South Korea-ASEAN Special Summit back in 2014 and other international conferences, including the 2005 Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit under its belt, Busan is confident it will successfully host the South Korea-ASEAN Special Summit 2019 and step forward as a major pillar of Asia's economy. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News, Busan.
It's not just the trade dispute between the world's 2 economic superpowers, the U.S. and China, that can influence the global economy, but also the trade dispute between South Korea and Japan. Hong Yu has the experts' take on the ongoing tensions between the 2 neighboring countries.
Japan's export restrictions against South Korea could negatively affect the global economy. That's according to American experts at a seminar on the South Korea-Japan relationship and its influence on trade and world economic order. Hosted by the Korea Economic Institute in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, the seminar gave experts the chance to discuss the ongoing trade war between the 2 Asian neighbors. Vice President of the Peterson Institute for International Economics, Marcus Nolan, suggested that the U.S. should play an active role in resolving the issue because the World Trade Organization's problem-solving mechanism has its limits. Others emphasize the need for the two countries to find a solution so that the globalization of the semiconductor supply chain is not disrupted. The World Economic Outlook report released by the International Monetary Fund on Tuesday local time also gave stricter export controls between South Korea and Japan as one of the factors that could disrupt global trade and supply chains. Other reasons that could contribute to slowing global economic growth include the U.S.-China trade dispute and the possibility of a no-deal Brexit. In order to resolve trade disputes, the IMF recommended more global cooperation and called for the reform of financial regulations. It also recommended countries to push for fiscal expansion so they can manage looser monetary policy. Hongyu, Arirang News.
The number of South Korean visitors to Japan plunged nearly 60% on year in September as Koreans continue their boycott in response to Japan's harsh trade restrictions. Our Kan Yong-woo has the story.
It all began in July when Japan imposed export curbs on 3 high-tech materials to South Korea. The materials are crucial for the production of semiconductors and displays, 2 of South Korea's biggest export items. Tokyo's measures triggered a huge voluntary boycott movement called No Japan among South Korean citizens. Those taking part stopped buying Japanese products and refrained from taking trips to Japan. The latest data released by the Japan National Tourism Organization on Wednesday shows the tourism boycott movement has only become more pronounced. The number of South Korean visitors to Japan plunged 58% on year in September. An estimated 200,000 South Koreans traveled to Japan last month, a sharp tumble compared to some 470,000 visitors a year ago. It's also the 3rd biggest drop since Japanese tourism authorities began releasing related data in 2003. The decline in September follows a 7% decrease in July and 48% drop in August. Due to the rapid downward trend in recent months, the number of South Korean visitors to Japan during the first 9 months of the year recorded some 4.8 million, 13% less than the same period last year. Japanese regions and travel agencies relying on South Korean tourism are especially feeling the heat. Fukuoka's Beetle Ferry service, sailing the daily route to Korea's southeastern port city of Busan, saw a 70% drop in South Korean passengers last month. Japan's biggest travel agency, JTB, said it had 80% fewer South Korean customers in the same month. The travel agency added reservations for October and November are down by similar percentages. Kan Yong-woo, Arirang News.
South Korea and Japan appear to be getting closer to a meeting of their prime ministers aimed at trying to resolve the country's recent tensions. Japanese media are reporting that Korea's Lee Nak-yeon and Japan's Shinzo Abe are looking to hold the meeting next Thursday. Lee will be attending Japanese Emperor Naruhito's enthronement ceremony next Tuesday and a related dinner banquet the following day. Meanwhile, Tokyo is considering postponing a celebratory parade after the emperor's enthronement. Broadcaster NHK says this is so Japan can deal with the aftermath of Typhoon Hagibis. Meanwhile, the Japanese Prime Minister has sent a tribute to the controversial Yasukuni war shrine. Since 2013, Abe has been sending offerings there instead of going in person. But the site was visited today by a member of Abe's cabinet, Eto Seiichi, and another group of politicians are scheduled to go on Friday. South Korea's foreign ministry expressed deep regret over those gestures, saying they are an attempt to justify Tokyo's wartime atrocities. The Yasukuni Shrine commemorates some 2.4 million Japanese war dead, as well as 14 Class A war criminals. The South Korean government will be working to deregulate the drone industry to achieve the commercialization of drone delivery by the year 2025 and enable the public to use the devices. Seoul will be working on dozens of regulations to support the development of technology and the free flying of drones. Oh Jung-hee reports.
South Korea is looking to cut red tape to boost the country's drone industry. On Thursday, the Land and Science Ministries as well as the Office for Government Policy Coordination agreed on a deregulation roadmap to create an environment where the drone industry can grow. The administration considers the drone industry one of the country's key growth engines. Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon stressed that the global drone market is growing fast and therefore requires quick innovations in government regulations. The government says it'll work to create spaces where the drones can be flown freely, separately from airplanes and therefore with less concern about congestion. This will help operate services like drone taxi or drone deliveries. The government will also be improving some regulations to prevent drones from being used for terrorism. Related government ministries will be developing necessary radar and equipment which will be allowed for use commercially. South Korea will also expand the use of drones in public services as well, like rescue operations, forest surveys, artificial rain, and communication. Seoul expects such plans could create an economic ripple effect worth $17 billion and create jobs for 170,000 people by 2028. The government aims to commercialize drone deliveries by 2025. 오정희, Arirang News.
2 more cases of African swine fever have been confirmed in areas near the border with North Korea. These again in wild boars. The Environment Ministry announced today that the 2 boars found dead within the civilian control line the previous day have tested positive for the virus. They were in the city of Paju and the county of Yeoncheon. This marks the 2nd straight day that boars have been confirmed to have ASF and the first time the virus has been found in Paju. With this, a total of 9 boars have been confirmed to have the virus, 7 of which were found within the civilian control line. The National Institute of Environmental Research plans to designate areas of 30 square kilometers around those locations as danger zones and strengthen fumigation efforts there. South Korea's Supreme Court has confirmed a suspended jail sentence for Lotte Group chairman Shin Dong-bin for bribery in the massive influence peddling scandal that led to the ouster of former President Park Geun-hye. Shin was initially sentenced to 2.5 years in prison in February 2018 for giving some $6 million in bribes to a close aide of the former president to win support for his duty-free business. Shin's sentence will be suspended for 4 years. The court's ruling was based on the assumption that Shin paid the bribes out of fear that his business could be affected negatively if he refused. Following the decision, Lotte Group released a statement saying that it will become a trustworthy company that contributes to the nation and society. Samsung has been ranked the world's 6th most powerful brand with a value worth over $61 billion. Industry tracker Interbrand has now put the Korean tech giant in 6th place for a 3rd year in a row. Samsung's brand value went up by 2% on year, passing the $60 billion mark 3 years after it reached the $50 billion mark. US tech giant Apple held on to the top spot with a brand value worth over $234 billion, followed by Google and Amazon. South Korea's Supreme Court has upheld a government order on Asiana Airlines to suspend its flights to San Francisco for 45 days by next February. The ban was ordered after a deadly crash in San Francisco 6 years ago. The airline had sought a court injunction against the measure, but the Supreme Court sided with the Transport Ministry, saying the accident was caused mainly by insufficient staff training. Asiana hasn't yet announced when it will stop the flights, but the suspension is expected to cost the debt-ridden carrier roughly $9 million. The South Korean national football team is back in Seoul after a quite bizarre World Cup qualifying match against North Korea, which ended with a goalless draw. Fans have been kept in the dark because the match was not broadcast live and there are no plans to broadcast even a recording of it. Our Won Jung-hwan went to Incheon Airport to hear what the players and staff had to say.
It was nearly 1 a.m. in the morning, but football fans and reporters were waiting in line at Incheon International Airport to greet the squad's arrival. It was a welcome return from Tuesday evening's peculiar match against North Korea, where the Taeguk Warriors had to play in an empty Kim Il-sung Stadium with no cameras capturing the action live. Indeed, a member of the South Korean delegation that traveled with the squad said the whole trip was a series of unpleasant surprises.
We couldn't communicate with people back home. There was no internet connection whatsoever. We were blocked in our hotel, so no one was able to move freely. The explanation was that they need to follow their own regulations. When we kept asking about it, everyone acted busy to avoid us.
The team also had to rough it out on the pitch as the North Koreans played very aggressively.
It's a shame we couldn't win, but to be honest, I think we should be happy no one got injured due to the extremely violent way they were playing. We could even hear some of the North Korean players cursing.
South Korea's head coach Paulo Bento also mentioned that the match officials had to stop the game regularly due to the sheer amount of fouls committed by the North Koreans. He said that while they are disappointed not to win, he's pleased his players coped with such a difficult situation. The South Korean team say they have brought a recorded copy of the game back with them. While South Korea's KBS had planned it to show the match on Thursday, providing the video quality is good enough and the full match is included on the DVD, they have decided in the end not to air the game. The much anticipated football match between the two Koreas ended with neither side scoring. But to decide who will get the ticket to the Qatar World Cup, the two sides need to meet again, only this time at a packed stadium in South Korea next June and aired live to the world. 원정환, 아리랑 뉴스, 인천.
Tuberculosis is one of the biggest and the deadliest medical challenges North Korea faces. Today, the chairman of the Eugene Bell Foundation, an NGO that has provided medical support to North Korea for decades, shared some alarming details about tuberculosis and other health problems plaguing the North. Our Ji-young was at the press conference.
Tuberculosis, which is known as the disease of the poor, is one of the most serious and contagious diseases in North Korea. The Eugene Bell Foundation, a non-profit organization, has been providing support and treatment to tuberculosis patients in North Korea for 24 years. In its bid to eradicate tuberculosis in North Korea, the foundation has been visiting the North every year to provide specialized support to those in need. At a press conference in Seoul on Friday, the chairman of the Eugene Bell Foundation, Dr. Stephen Linton, citing World Health Organization research in 2017, said more than 130,000 new cases of tuberculosis are reported and 16,000 die from the disease every year. He said that unlike last year, after the foundation's visit in North Korea last month, the regime allowed the foundation to expand its program outside of Pyongyang. However, he said that there has been little improvement in recent years in terms of humanitarian issues.
Although there have been many political changes lately as the two Koreas and the U.S. had some summits, there's been little improvement on the issue of separated families, and much of the food and medical aid from South Korea was restricted. Also, the global fund that fights AIDS, TB, and malaria in North Korea stopped providing support.
Linton stressed that it is necessary to separate humanitarian assistance from politics.
Life-threatening humanitarian issues should be dealt with separately, as basic human needs should be met regardless of the political situation. In that sense, help is needed from South Korea, from both the public and private sectors, to seek ways to support North Korea.
Linton also suggested creating a private fund in South Korea for humanitarian assistance to the North. Ji-young, Arirang News.
A meeting between President Trump and Democrat leaders on U.S. policy in Syria was cut short after it broke down into insults on Wednesday. This comes as two of the heaviest hitters in the Trump administration are en route to Turkey to discuss the Syria conflict with the Turkish president. Our Kim Jae-hee has the latest.
A meeting at the White House about Syria was cut short after President Trump and Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, clashed over Trump's withdrawal of U.S. troops from northern Syria. President Trump reportedly called Pelosi a third-rate politician, and the two sides exchanged insults before Democrat leaders stormed out. This comes as Vice President Mike Pence and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo are set to meet Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan face-to-face on Thursday in a bid to convince him to end Turkey's military action in Syria. Emphasizing the need to stop the incursion into Syria, Pompeo said a ceasefire is required before they can start to rectify the situation. Meanwhile, the New York Times reported on Wednesday that while Russia is willing to fill the U.S. void in northern Syria, President Trump said it's up to Russia whether to get involved. A letter sent last week by President Trump to his Turkish counterpart has also been revealed. Trump warned Erdogan on October 9th not to be a tough guy or a fool as Turkey pushed ahead with its military operation in Syria. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
US President Donald Trump says he will not sign a trade deal with China until he meets President Xi Jinping next month at the APEC summit in Chile. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Wednesday, Trump said the partial trade deal declared last week is being, quote, papered. There has been some misreporting. He said that China will start purchasing after the deal is signed, insisting China has already started buying products from American farmers. Last week, Washington and Beijing announced the first phase of a deal to end their trade war, but neither have offered details. British researchers have found that living in areas polluted by high levels of fine dust could take a decade off your memory. Scientists at Warwick University surveyed some 34,000 British people and found that those living in heavily polluted areas showed a significant lag in remembering words compared to those living in areas with cleaner air. The difference was equivalent to aging 10 years. While there needs to be further research on how nitrogen dioxide and air particles affect human memory, the recent study shows a strong link between the two. Official merchandise of the Korea Baseball Organization have been found to contain high levels of harmful chemicals. The Korea Consumer Agency did safety checks on dozens of products such as thundersticks and gloves and found large traces of heavy metals and phthalates, a group of chemicals used to make plastic soft and malleable. They are known to interfere with the body's hormones, which can hinder children's growth, and they have even been linked to cancer. The agency says related stores have stopped selling such products. Korean pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin had a dazzling 2019 season for the LA Dodgers, and his performance was also recognized by his peers in the MLB. They picked the 32-year-old as one of the top 3 National League pitchers for this year, along with Jacob deGrom of the New York Mets and Mike Soroka of the Atlanta Braves. Ryu was also nominated for the Best National League Comeback Player Award. He led MLB this year with a 2.32 ERA and earned 14 wins, throwing more than 180 innings. Let's now look at some of Arirang's digital media content.
And today we have another episode of Koreator, where foreigners share their love for Korea.
베트남에서 온 댄스 커버팀 세븐틴 카라츠라고 합니다. 세븐틴의 고맙다 댄스 영상 중에서 제일 자랑스러운 영상입니다. 댄스 커버 영상은 어떻게 준비하고 촬영한지 지금 보여드리겠습니다.
그래서 너야. vào cho nó mua xe xong. Không may là em là mình không hiểu là random cộng trừ nhân chia.
It was typical autumn weather here in Korea today, but tomorrow you'll be needing your umbrellas and raincoats.
I certainly do hope it doesn't get too chilly with the rain. Let's get more details from our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Now, like you said, autumn rain is expected for most parts of the country tomorrow, starting from Jeju and the East Coast in the morning. Now, this will expand into the southern regions between the afternoon and the evening. And the amount of rain will vary in places, but in general, it's not going to be too heavy. Now, the southeast coast will receive up to 40 millimeters, while the rest of the country will only get up to 5 millimeters of rain. Now, keep in mind of the big temperature drops in the morning too. Now, Seoul will start off to 13 degrees Celsius tomorrow, while the southern regions such as Busan and Jeju will begin at 16 and 18 degrees respectively. Now, Seoul will be under some dark clouds in the afternoon with a daytime high of 23 degrees Celsius, higher than today, and which will be similar for most areas. Now, the autumn showers will stay over in Jeju and the East Coast until Saturday. Now, the rest of the country can look forward to a favorable weekend. Now, we'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will do it for today's Arirang News Center. Thank you, as always, for watching.
Stay tuned for more news updates throughout the day. News in Depth is next.